David Skidmore of Third Coast Percussion, welcome to Cultural Attaché.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
This is a busy time for you guys. You're celebrating your 20th anniversary. You have an album coming out. You're on the road with Twyla Tharp. You're doing your own stuff. No rest for the wicked, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah, we opened a week-long run at the New York City Center with Twyla last night. We go to France next week to do a different program, and then we're back with Twyla. Just finished a tour of the late Zakir Hussein's great new piece. It's been an exciting time.
Great. So, as exciting as this time is, I want to go back in time before we go into what's going on now. If in the months prior to June of 2005, what were your earliest goals about what Third Coast Percussion could actually become?
We only really knew that we loved the music that we got to play in school at Northwestern, studying with Michael Burritt. And we felt like most percussion ensemble music was played by students in schools, and there was no reason that it shouldn't be on other stages and in front of general audience members. But so we thought to ourselves, yeah, let's go out and play concerts. And then shortly after, we're like, well, why don't we try and make a living doing it? And then figuring out how to actually do that took years.
Well, you were getting started at a time where music was shifting to streaming, as opposed to physical product. So that's a dicey time to be thinking about a career in music, isn't it?
It is. There were a lot of things about when we got started that in retrospect were tricky, uh, but also, taught us a lot of valuable lessons I think we carried forward. We put out our first album on CD in 2006, and then we didn't put another one out until 2011 or 12, I think. And I think we were figuring it out. We weren't listening to CDs anymore, even by that time. Um, and the idea of the album sort of in some ways disintegrated. Um, but we were focusing on live shows and other ways of getting our music out. So we were pretty early on putting out YouTube videos of our performances. And I think that it completely changed the financial model for any musician, but was an interesting new paradigm that we got to be a part of.
But 20 years ago, would you think that you would have composers wanting to come to you and commission works for you? Would you think that you would be collaborating with the likes of a Twyla Tharp?
No, no, it was definitely no. Uh, we would have, you know, been excited to hear that's where it was going to go. But we were just our worldview was so much different and in a lot of ways more limited back then. We were focused on the music that we knew, music by Steve Reich, music by John Cage, by the way, still music we love and that we play. But a lot of the directions the group has gone in, yeah, there was no way we could foresee it.
What do you think is the greatest lesson you've learned in the 20 years through that journey of where you are today?
That's a great question. I think one of the most important lessons that we've learned is that as an artist, you have to start rooted in a practice, in a tradition, in a way of making your art that you've studied and apprenticed in. But you can go so much deeper if you can, at least on some level, master your own art form and then be able to take it different places. I think when we started, we were focused on, like I said, some composers that we knew, a certain way of rehearsing, a certain way of playing concerts. And I think a big part of our journey has been figuring out that every time we challenge ourselves to bring our musical world in conversation with a completely different uh, mode of expression, we grow, our audience grows. I think the artists we work with grow, and everything gets more interesting.
Well, and the music grows as well because I don't believe that music is a stagnant thing. Not once it's written, that's not it. It's how it's performed. And the great thing about Third Coast Percussion is you guys have a unique perspective on how music can be performed.
Thank you. I completely agree with you. And I think one of the big challenges that Western classical music faces is um, any perception that any performer or audience has that a piece of music should be fixed and and not a living, breathing thing. It's great. It's amazing actually that Bach, Beethoven, and Schubert and left behind roadmaps for how their music can be performed. Um, and it should be performed because it's wonderful. But the idea that there's one way to do it is limiting. Um, and the great freedom of being in a group like ours is that our music that's written for us can continue to evolve, and the music that we write can continue to evolve. There's like the project we're doing with Twyla Tharp right now, we're playing arrangements of Philip Glass's piece Aguas de Amazonia. Those pieces started really inspired by these sketches of Philip's that became the piano etudes. And then a fabulous Brazilian group of Wakachi arranged them for their set of instruments. We arranged their arrangements, taking inspiration also from Philip's etudes, and made arrangements on marimbas, vibraphones, and other instruments that are, you know, idiosyncratic but typical to us. And then when we started working with Twyla, she wanted a combination of sound worlds, ours and Awakchi's. So we created a whole nother version of the piece. And we love that. We don't run from that. We run towards it because uh, great music isn't only the arrangement and orchestration that people know of it already. Great music can be great with a lot of different costumes.
And anybody who wants to hear that can pick up the recording or stream the recording of Aguas de Amazona, which I think is really terrific and gave me a new lens at looking at that particular piece of music, which I've known for quite some time. You've been on the road with Twyla performing this piece. What are you looking for in collaborations, that of music to play, so that you guys can be excited by what you're doing?
The thing that we look for more and more is someone who is going to uh, not only inspire us, but also challenge us. Um, so with Twyla, we've followed her career, and especially once we started the collaboration, did just such a deep dive into her life and her writing and her work that we could find. Um, and she's collaborated with a who's who of not only the art world and the performing arts world, but the world of pop music and just such a wide range of artists, filmmakers, theater makers. And so it's incredibly intimidating to walk into that situation and say, okay, uh, you choreographed Hair and Amadeus and Moving Out, and you choreographed on Mikhail Baryshnikov, and you've worked with David Byrne, and on and on. And so if you think about it too much, you can go in and say you can have an inferiority complex and imposter syndrome. But those are the collaborations where we really grow because we sort of go in with what we have. We keep our ears and eyes open so that we're learning as much as or far more than we're offering. And we come out on the other side of a collaboration like that, more ready for the next one. So that's really what we look for, whether it's someone whose career is storied and their past collaborators inspire us, or it's simply their work and their genius inspires us and challenges us. I think the best collaborations are the ones where we sort of look at each other and say, can we actually pull this off? Because if we go in thinking, yeah, this is gonna be no problem, then it could still be great, but maybe it won't push us as as hard as it could and get us to the next step.
Have you found yourself in a position where you actually couldn't achieve what you wanted to do in a collaboration?
Not yet, but I would say I personally felt close with Zakir Hussain. I think he's um I think he's the best musician that I've ever been in a room with. Which doesn't in any way disparage any of the other musicians I've been in the room with. He was just such a genius. And not I could talk about Zakir forever. He was the most beautiful person. Um, but and as a musician, just completely extraordinary, virtuosic, but equally, if not more so, musical, and able to memorize and pull out at the drop of a hat the most complicated rhythmic vocabulary that he'd been learning since he was a baby. And also then apply that to whatever musical scenario that he was in. So the first time we met with Zakir, I walked away saying, I'm back in school. This is this is school for me, and I have to learn. I have so much to learn, and I have so much catching up to do. And that was really, really inspiring. And I know for the other guys, it was the same.
Well, I looked up some interviews that Zakir Hussain gave through his life, and there was one quote that really stood out to me. He said, "Every time I play with someone, just interacting with them points me to a different nook or a corner in my playing that I had overlooked." So, what nooks and corners did playing with Zakir Hussain point to you?
The big one was improvisation, because it's not the strong suit of a Western classically trained person most of the time. And one of the incredible things about Hindustani classical music is that it is a rigorous, um, uh, you know, fixture of compositions, but they're also has spontaneity and improvisation is such an important part of it. So there were Zakir was very kind to us, and primarily the pieces written out, but the end of the second movement, and at other little moments throughout, there are choices to be made, and that has been fantastic as a challenge to ourselves. And we have a lifetime more to learn in terms of improvisation, but that a window into that or I should say like a wider window into that world was really fantastic. I will also say that the conception of rhythm in Hindustani classical music is something that has become integral to us as well, because there's simple to understand, difficult to execute concepts behind even just how they count complicated rhythms and conceptualize them that open up an even broader world of rhythmic innovation to us. And that's been really inspiring and something that we'll carry with us far beyond this collaboration.
Do you see yourselves perhaps even exploring just a totally improvised work?
Sure. I mean, why not? You know, if it's the right fit for us. The interesting thing for us is that I think we're quite comfortable improvising um, freely, because the exploration of sound is um, is such an integral part of what we do. I think the real challenge for us is improvising within a form. Um, so you know, we've actually had a number of opportunities to do improvisation that's a little bit more, has structure but has more freedom. But if you ask any of us to, blow over the changes for Autumn Leaves, you know, we wouldn't be able to do it, or we could do it, but you wouldn't want to hear it. I'm not saying that's what we're trying to do, but like the idea of being uh, creative and spontaneous in the moment over a form, and creating something that is just for us personally as interesting and inspiring as the fully fleshed out music that we compose or that is composed for us, that's a, a challenge that's set before us by the world.
I wonder if that's a flaw in formal music education, because I was a classical piano performance major. Um, and, there was a point, because I haven't played the piano seriously in a very long time, where I could read, Beethoven or Liszt or whatever. But ask me to do an improvisation on Autumn Leaves, and I would be completely lost because there was not enough ear training or learning how to hear music. And I'm wondering if you think that somehow formal music structure needs to include more of that.
I absolutely 100%. I think it should. I think that I have a lot of thoughts about music education, which are easy for me to say because I'm not ensconced in that world. Um, but I think I know for myself, I spent countless hours learning things that are completely useless to me. I might as well have been learning, I don't know, quantum physics or something. It's at that for the daily use I get out of it. Learning about uh, I don't know, Renaissance motets or Lannon, Periton, or not that it's not interesting. I love that music, but it has absolutely no bearing on my life. Um, I think that music education, uh, the greatest service it could do for future musicians is to introduce a lot of possible ideas to people, allow them to find the ideas that inspire them that they want to build their career around, and then offer them the means to go deeper into whatever area they're interested in. So introduce Lannon and Periton, and if someone is deeply inspired by it, give them the resources to go further. But you have to introduce jazz harmony, pop harmony, improvisation, Hindustani classical rhythm, I think, and raga. Um, you can't do a full course on all of these. You should, I think, introduce them all in a very meaningful way for several weeks, and then uh, the worst thing that'll happen is everyone will be enriched with more knowledge of the music that exists in our world. Not this very narrow lane of Western classical music, which is absolutely fantastic, but one of many absolutely fantastic musical traditions in the world. And then yeah, and I think if you then allow people to go deeper into the track that they want to go in, a lot of good could come of that.
I think so too. So a 20th anniversary is not just about looking back, it's about looking forward. And on April 11th, your album Standard Stoppages is being released. What does that album and its title indicate about where Third Coast Percussion is today and where it's going?
Sure. Well, starting with the title, it's from a Marcel Duchamp work called Three Standard Stoppages, where we like the evocativeness of the title. We don't feel like you have to know what's going on, but he dropped a string three times onto a piece of wood, and he's basically like freezing time, like the idea that the string is mutable, and you just freeze these moments, and then art is created by sort of looking at these three moments in time. Um, and so, just thinking about time in general was a big part of us putting that album together. Um, and the album was about us looking to our past, and that we reached out to and are continuing to reach out to some of our favorite past collaborators and asking them to write new music for us. So Jlin is a composer on that album, and we've worked with Jlin a number of times. She's one of our absolute favorite collaborators of all time. And she wrote a new piece inspired by one of her favorite composers. So she drew from the Bach Mass in B minor and reworked a couple of phrases from that into a whole new piece. But then in addition to looking to our favorite past collaborators, we also, put together a list of our musical heroes that we wanted to reach out to ask us to ask them to write new music for us. So that's the new pieces by Jessie Montgomery, Tigran Hamasyan, and Zakir Hussain, who we were so fortunate to have write these new pieces for us. I forgot to mention Musekiwa Chingodza, who's another favorite past collaborator of ours, and another person who's really pushed us outside of our comfort zone in terms of uh, uh, just his way of conceptualizing music and teaching music, and even just concepts of ownership of music are just so different in so many different places that we're constantly learning.
How much is being scared a part of the ability for you as a musician to move forward?
Um, I think that when you're actually scared, it's quite counterproductive. So I think when you can get to a place where you realize that it's a challenge and nothing to be afraid of, but rather something an occasion to rise to, um, that's when it can become well, that's the best situation because that's where you're growing and you're learning and you're not staying stagnant. And I think the big lesson for us in this 20th anniversary season is that it's you can, 20 is just a number. It's a landmark. It's a sort of a place to sort of stop for a moment on our journey and look around and say, okay, well, where have we been and where are we going? Um, but for us, it's we weren't interested in doing like a retrospective tour or like a greatest hits album or something like that. Um, we wanted to like challenge ourselves more, push ourselves even further because we've done collaborations. Our collaboration with Jlin was very fun, very challenging, in the best way. She's an electronic musician. She doesn't work in Western notation. Many of our collaborators don't. So finding ways to work with Jlin, finding ways to work with Devonte Hines, um, Danny Elfman, even. These were all challenges that were unique. Um, and I feel like the projects that we've done this year are just pushing ourselves even further, which I think just gets more and more important the more that we've played together. Because I think for us, the worst thing we could do is to reach a stagnant point. I think that wouldn't be inspiring, and I don't think we would be as happy, and I don't think the music would be as interesting.
Would that be the point where you would say enough is enough?
I suppose so. We we the conversation around enough is enough has not come up. We really feel fortunate. We love what we do. Um, Even the hard days are so worth it, and we're so fortunate because we've got an amazing team of people that support what we do. Our general manager Reba, our production manager Colin, development associate Rebecca, operations assistant no um, Nolan, our marketing coordinator Amanda. I mean, everyone is just great. Our board of directors. So we haven't gotten to the point where we sort of say um, that enough is enough. I do think if we were bored and uninspired, that might come up sooner.
Right. Now, I think one of the great things about the success of Third Coast Percussion is the fact that it has opened up a whole world of music for composers to write for you and music for you to play. Because it's not like you could have made a career out of performing Bela Bartok, John Cage and Steve Reich. I mean, there had to be more in the repertoire. What do you think your ensemble's influence has been on composers in creating new works for you and therefore pushing the edge of what a percussion ensemble can and should be?
That's a really great question too. I think um one thing that I hope that the works that have been written for us open up for future composers is the um the concept of how music is created. Because every piece that we commission is a collaborative effort. We're asking a composer to be the creative visionary around a work that we're going to help create. Um, I do feel like there is a conception in Western classical music that the composer stands alone, the performer stands alone, and that they shouldn't really interact too much. The composer's vision shouldn't be diluted. It should be pure. And if they come up with something that's a challenge for the performer or impractical for the performer, then the performer rises to the occasion and that pushes the performance practice. And I don't think there's anything wrong with any of them uh, uh, in theory, but actually, when a composer and a performer work together collaboratively, we think you get the best work because you get the creative vision, uh, and well, you get all kinds of different things from composers. Maybe you get an amazing formal structure, amazing melodies and harmonies, amazing sound concepts, amazing programmatic concepts. Um, uh, but if you marry that with performers who are dedicated to a collaborative process, then you can have it realized on the instruments in a more successful way. So that's the thing that we would love um, for the future of our instrumentation and really the future of all classical music. And the other thing that I'm proud of that our organization has been a part of, along with other percussion groups, is when we got started, no one said to us, "You should play only music by white men." But um, about 6 or 7 years into playing, we sort of surveyed our repertoire, and lo and behold, most composers whose music we were playing were white men, and they were people who had very similar formal training as ours and that sort of thing. And we have been and we continue to be dedicated to diversifying the repertoire of classical music and including an extraordinary range of creative voices in our practice. And we've seen how that has influenced the music that's played by percussion ensembles all over the world. And that's something that we're happy to have seen and we will continue to do.
In troubled times like the ones we're going through right now and have been going through for a while, what is the conversation Third Coast Percussion wants to have with its audience?
We are dedicated to the idea that we can offer to the world exciting and unexpected musical experiences.
Good, we both had to do that.
Um, and when someone uh, um, has an unexpected experience that surprises them, delights them on some level, it opens them up to another perspective and another possibility. And it's easier and easier today to curate your life so that you're surrounded by what you already know, what already makes you most comfortable, what you already agree with. And we are excited about and dedicated to the idea that we want to invite people in. When we got started, a lot of contemporary classical music, I don't think this was by design, but it felt like it was at arm's length and it kept you at arm's length. And it was like you are enjoying the work of specialists. Don't try to understand it. Just appreciate that you get to hear it. And our approach, and I think the approach of a lot of great music creators today is come on in. You may not know everything that's going on, but let me tell you what I find exciting about it. And let me tell you a little bit about the person who wrote this piece. And when you couple that with, and this is someone you've never heard of, a style of music that you thought you didn't like, then people's perspectives can get just a centimeter broader. And I think that effort needs to be made today by everyone.
Yes. And as it relates to music, how do you know you don't like it unless you take the time to listen to it?
Absolutely. I think that relates to music. I think that's everything. It's like if you don't present yourself with the point and the counterpoint, then you don't actually, your convictions don't hold much water because you have to challenge them to know that you actually hold them. So yeah, you only like country music. Okay, great. But listen to Jlin and listen to Vontae Hines and listen to Philip Glass and just see if you like any of it.
Right. And listen to John Coltrane and,
Yes.
yeah, I
Oh
mean,
my
you can go
God.
down the road.
Absolutely.
Well,
And if you're if the only music you listen to is John Coltrane, you know, listen to some country music. There's great stuff out there. Listen to some Taylor Swift. I don't know. There's so much great music in the world. The word and it's all also available. Because the flip side of like you can curate your musical experience these days and hyper specify. But as one of our collaborators used to say, in the proverbial record store, which doesn't exist anymore, Mozart is right next to Mos Def, and it just goes like that. So you have access to so much music now, and what an amazing time to be alive where you can hear all this stuff.
right. I want to finish by asking you one more question, and it was about something that Philip Glass is quoted as having said. He said, I don't know what I'm doing, and it's the not knowing that makes it interesting. What is it that you didn't know that made it interesting 20 years ago at the start of Third Coast Percussion? And what is it you hope you know going into the next 20 years?
Ooh. I didn't know. I think we didn't know uh, how broad the umbrella of classical music could be when we got started. And it's been interesting and inspiring to continue to grow our umbrella uh, over the years. And I just want us to keep doing that, you know. 20 years from now, I want us to look back on, 2025 and say, oh, we were getting there, but we were still limiting ourselves in all these ways. Um, because and you asked if there was any collaboration, any challenge that was too great that we had failed. And I can't think of any, but maybe we should push ourselves until we get to that point and know where the frontier is. Because I think to the Philip Glass quote, I think there's something in that to me of like not having a fear of failure, you know, because that's how humans learn is pushing themselves. And I think especially the further along you get on your journey, the easier it is to not push yourself. So I want to work in the opposite direction.